Hey, Jamie here. Good morning. Happy Monday. And we get another week to continue building the lives and the careers that we want. And I want to start off by reminding you that money is not the goal. In everything that we do in our life, in our career, the real goal is purpose and contribution, caring about what it is that we're doing, about personal growth and consistently getting better at what we do, and then being a top performer. If we can master those three parts of our lives and our careers, the money will naturally come, and as a result, we'll have the freedom that we want for our lives and our careers. So really, freedom is the ultimate goal. It's not about money. Life and career is not about money. All right, so now in this video, what I want to break down and share with you is focus. Now, this is something that a lot of people talk about, but then on the opposite side of the spectrum, there seems to be a lot of value in multitasking. Everybody talks about multitasking, being able to do, 3 or 5 things all at the same time. So there's kind of two camps. A lot of people believe, all right, we need to deeply focus and do one thing very well. And then on the other side of the spectrum, a lot of people believe that you need to be a jack of all trades and you need to do everything all at the same time. So I want to talk about focus both at the micro and at the macro level, and I'll explain that. But then I also want to talk about why do most people have a very difficult time focusing, both short-term and long-term. And then at the end of the video, I want to share several thoughts and ideas for how you can consistently improve and get better at focusing both today, but then also long-term in your life and your career. And as a really quick metaphor, a lot of people, they think of the sun and how it shoots off energy and light in 360 degrees in every single direction, X, Y, and Z axes. Now, if you were to think of your life or your friend's life or parents' life or anyone else's lives, everyone is shooting energy and focusing in different areas. Now, if you were to take all the sun's energy and concentrate it into one beam, and that one beam hit Earth, it would bore a hole straight through the Earth. That's how powerful that energy is. But because it's not focused, well, we're able to live in it. And so what we want to do with our life is determine how much energy do we need to concentrate until we have a beam strong enough to be able to achieve what it is that we actually want with our lives and our careers. So I'm excited, and let's jump into it. All right, so I'm very excited to be able to talk about focus because it really is a superpower. And very few people have mastered the ability to focus in their lives or in their careers and be able to make decisions that align with what it is that they want to focus on. So if I were to kind of boil down and introduce the 3 main ways that not having focus is affecting people's lives, I would say that the first part is short term. So think of that as social media or phone calls or email or notifications or pings or literally anything else that is instantaneously affecting you. And you could be in the middle or flow state or doing something that's important. And most people just, the moment their phone goes off, the moment an email comes through, something bings or pops or pings or something, they immediately and instinctively react to it. There's no thought, there's no hesitation. It's just an immediate, instantaneous reaction. And oftentimes it's reactive both in mental and physical. So your mind immediately changes state, but then your hand naturally reaches for the phone. And there's no block in asking yourself, do I want to react to this? Do I want to stop focusing on what it is that I'm doing? So that's the biggest point where most people don't control their focus. They don't have the self-discipline. They haven't trained that discipline to be able to stop the natural reaction to these instantaneous small little distractions. But then on the second part, which is the longer term, which is most people don't have focus in where they want to go with their lives and their careers. So they're either in a company or they're within the marketplace or within their family or within their friend group or within the community, but they're kind of on a wave and they're riding this wave with everyone else. And it's almost like they're just kind of coasting or they're drifting. And whatever happens, happens. Some opportunity pops up and they immediately compare that to where they are today. And they make the decision as to whether or not they want to take this opportunity or not based on the current situation. rather than asking, what is it that I truly want? And I'm going to make a decision based on that. So there's a huge difference between making a decision based on where you are today, your current situation, and making a decision based on your future situation. But most people don't have that clarity, and so they're unable to make those decisions and maintain the focus. And then the third part is really thinking about the reaction. So there's a reactive mindset and there's a proactive mindset. Now, most people, and this is because this is human nature, and really it's just nature of anything. It's our primitive brain, but most people react to any and all stimulus. So someone yells at you and they immediately yell back. Someone gets angry with you, you immediately get angry back. Something pops up and distracts you, you immediately react to it and pay attention to it. So most people have not built the ability to shut off distractions or to control their emotions and then reallocate that energy and that mental focus on what it is that they want. And that is where the proactive mindset comes in, which is, I know what I want, I know why it's important to me, I know what I'm focusing on, and I have the ability, I have the clarity and mindset that I'm able to sacrifice any and all things that don't align with what I want or what I want for my loved ones. So most people do not have the proactive mindset. And we need to make sure that we build this mindset and we begin to disassociate from the constant instantaneous reactions or the natural emotional reactions that we have to the stimulus around us. So now the first question that I want to address in this video is, how come most people don't and can't control their focus? And I've boiled it down to kind of three main reasons that are applicable to everyone's life in every situation. And it's something that it's uncommon to have these things because it's so rare. And so what we need to do is, once we know what these problems are, then we can address them, fix them, and begin implementing the solution and transform our lives and our careers, because we can finally have focus on what's most important to us. So now, the first reason why most people can't and don't focus is because they don't have a set value structure. Now, when people talk about beliefs and values, it sounds squishy and cliche. It's almost beaten to the point on social media where everyone's like, oh, be true to your authentic self, be yourself. But the thing is we created ourselves. Who I was when Jamie was 5 years old or 10 years old, he was very different than who he is today. And even, 3 or 5 years ago, the man I was back then is very different than who I was today. And I'm sure that the same thing is true for you. You are nothing more than a sum aggregate of everything that's happened in the past, and who you become in the future is going to be the sum aggregate of all the things that happen between now, today, and whatever point in time you want to focus on. So when we talk about values, think of it as it's a mental filter that you have that gives you conviction in your life and your career about what is most important to me. And everyone else is going to try to take your time. Everyone else is going to try to take your resources. Everyone else wants your attention, your focus, your everything. And if you spend your whole life pleasing everybody else, then, and I'm pretty sure I talked about this in a previous video, but it's like you will get to the point where you become frustrated because you're serving everyone else, but at the end of the day, it's like, am I doing what's most important for me? And it's not a selfish thing. It's by doing what's best for you, you will have so much more to give to everyone else because you're happy, you're fulfilled, you're excited, you have the resources. And so we need this value structure to be able to make difficult decisions, to be able to say, yes, I do need to move companies, or yes, I need to make this important decision in my life that's going to be very difficult because it involves relationships or people or emotion. And so when you think of a value structure, think of it as emotions. And the way that you can think about a value is it's not a thing. It's what does that thing give you emotionally? How does it make you feel? So for example, if I were to ask you, what are your top values in life? Most people say, family, friends, experiences, and those are all great things. But that's the point. They're things. And at the end of the day, those things give you something, or they make you feel a certain type of way. So a lot of people who value family, my question to you would be, is it not true that there are other people who don't value their family? And for people who value friends, is it true that there are other people who don't value friends? And it's not that one is right or wrong, it's what emotions are you associating to those things. And those are going to ultimately make you feel a certain way about the thing, and how you feel about it is going to determine whether or not you value it. So what you need to do is know, what are the most important feelings in my life? And then how am I going to make sure that I'm aligning my life with these things? So a constant battle that people have, and you see this especially with people who are, financially successful, but they're not happy, they're not fulfilled. Well, it's because what they've done is inside they feel that, love, happiness, connection with other people, internally that is their value structure. They want to be happy, they want to give love, they want to feel loved. But at the end of the day, what they've done is they've built a life and a career where they have to sacrifice what's actually most important to them in order to continue doing this thing. And so they have an internal value conflict. And if you live your life with internal value conflicts, you're never going to be able to maximize yourself, because you're literally tearing yourself apart. And so we need this value structure. And through that value structure, we can begin to identify and make very difficult decisions about, what do I want and what do I not want? What am I saying yes to? And what are all the things that I'm saying no to? We need to become no people. And that's been given a really bad reputation because, everyone's like, oh, you need to be open to experiences. And that's true. We need to be open-minded. But at the end of the day, if we're open-minded to everything, we're like the sun. We just blast our thoughts and our energies and our focus in every single direction, and we never actually achieve anything substantial. We just keep drifting and coasting, doing exactly what everyone else is doing. Well, are your values the exact same values as everyone else around you? Probably not. You want different things. And so you need to have those values concrete in prioritized order, because if you have two things that are important to you, you need to know which one takes precedent. Because if you don't have that structure, that prioritization, you will go crazy trying to make decisions. And at the end of the day, it'll be too painful to make a decision. And so the worst possible thing happens, which is you don't make a decision. You just keep coasting. You settle. And you keep pushing off and procrastinating these tough decisions until eventually you're in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever. And finally it hits you where it's like, all right, I need to make this decision. It should not have taken that long. If you had had that structure and that clarity in what's most important to me, you could have made that decision much, much sooner. So now the second main reason why people cannot and don't focus in their lives and their careers is because they don't have a set vision, mission, and commitments for themselves. Now, what I mean by that is we cannot have or build what we have not asked for or planned for. And when you think of a vision, it is, what does my life look like, my career look like 3 years from now, 10 years from now? And we don't need to have all of the answers. It doesn't have to be written in stone, concrete, step by step by step by step by step for 10 years. That's impossible. Too much will change. Technology will change. The marketplace will change. The workplace culture will change. Companies will change. Everything changes. And so we can't have everything built out in step-by-step detail, but we need to have a vision. And I love using artists as examples. Artists have not planned every single stroke when they imagine and envision their masterpiece or their artwork. Instead, what they have is they have an image in their mind, a feeling, an emotion, and a connection to the end result, and they know what it should look like, but they don't know exactly how they're going to do it yet. They don't get lost in the detail. They know, and everyone's heard, don't lose the forest for the trees, but it's true. For your life, you need to know, what is the forest? What is the end vision that I'm building? And then once you have that, then you need to align yourself with a mission, which is, what is so important to me that I'm going and willing to do things that will be difficult in the short term, but will prove immensely important to me and ultimately valuable in the long term. And most people are doing work that they just don't deeply care about. And so you need to align yourself with something that you genuinely do care about, because you're going to work a lot harder. You're going to be a lot more creative. You're going to grow and develop and be a lot more open-minded. And you'll naturally bring an energy and an influence to that mission that very few people have in their careers. And so we need a vision. We need a mission. And then in terms of commitments, a lot of people set goals. Now, goals are amazing, and yes, we need them, but there's a big difference between setting a goal and being committed to a goal. And so what I encourage you and everyone I work with is don't set goals for 12 months from now. Instead, you want to set commitments. You want to draw the line in the sand and etch it into stone and say, this is what will get done. And there are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Anyone else can try to influence me, but this is what I'm doing. This will get done. It is a commitment. I've determined, I've decided, it's done, and I'm moving forward. And think of a decision, and that's really hard to do, and I know how hard that is to do. But it's when you think of a commitment, you're going to spend a lot of time and a lot of thought and energy and emotion thinking about what am I willing to commit myself to, because that's a big decision, especially if you hold yourself to it. So there's going to be this long period of thinking, analyzing, researching, and then ultimately making a decision. And there's going to be a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and all these emotions bundled up in here. But in that moment that you make the decision, all that's done. And your mind should literally flip from analyze, research, think, decide, all that. It's the moment that decision is made, your mind literally dumps the emotion, gets rid of it, and is like, I'm committed to this, and we're going to see what happens. Now, if you make progress and you're receiving feedback from that decision, and you're seeing outcomes and you're learning from the outcomes, well, if you need to redecide later on, that's okay. But most people, spend all this time and emotion and all this to make a decision, and then after they've made the decision, they then spend all that period afterwards doubting themselves, or feeling scared or anxious or afraid of failure or rejection or all these other things. But you've already made the decision. And if it's a commitment, it doesn't matter whether you're afraid or whether you're nervous or whether you're worried or anxious or any of these other negative emotions. It's inside I've committed to it. It will get done no matter what. So we need a vision, we need a mission, and we need commitments. And the other thing is, so people, and I know I talked about this in the beginning, but a reactive mindset versus a proactive mindset. So kind of this part with the vision, mission, and commitments, what I want to break down here is most people make decisions comparatively based on today's situation. So where they are in their life right now, where they are in their company, the position they're in, how much money they're making, how happy they are, like they deeply understand their current situation. And so instead, what they do is they look at their environment and all the different opportunities that are available currently today, and they're comparing current opportunities to their current situation. And they're making decisions based on a slightly better job, slightly more income, slightly better relationship, slightly better work-life balance, slightly better whatever. And it's always slightly better, but it's never truly what they want. And it's because they're making that comparative decision based on today's situation. So instead, what you want to do is you need to define that future. And once you know that future and put that stake in the ground, you then have the ability, almost like a superpower, to make decisions based on that future situation and compare available opportunities, not to today, but to the future situation. And when you can make that shift from a reactive environment, constant reacting to stimulus and whatever's available, and you're just comparing it to today, if you can switch it to the proactive mindset, which is, this is where I'm going, I'm going to scan and understand everything that's available today. And if those align or serve or benefit or help me in any way, shape, or form get to where I'm going, awesome, I'll take advantage of it. But if they don't, cut it. You sacrifice it. It's done. It's gone. You don't even pay attention to it. But very few people have that ability of that laser-like focus on where they're going. So now let's talk about the third main reason why most people can't and don't focus, both in the short term and also in the long term. And that is that they don't have a very strong, conditioned sense of self-control and self-discipline. So most people allow anyone and anything to steal their time, to distract them, and to really cause them to shift their mental attention from one thing to another. So they have their phone on loud. They have all their notifications turned on. They constantly have social media up with all the other 30 tabs that they have open on their computer. Most people have so much stimulus available in their environment that they're constantly, you're setting yourself up to get distracted. Everything is turned on volume-wise. It vibrates. It's directly next to you. And so all these different things are constantly going to steal your attention. They're going to steal your time. And the other thing is most people have not, they haven't conditioned themselves to control their emotions. And that is the hardest part, but it's also the most important part. In order to get to whatever we want, both in our lives and our careers, we need to have emotional mastery, or at least very strong emotional control. So a simple example that I know everyone will relate to is when someone yells at you, everyone has a default reaction, an emotional reaction. And it's either going to be fight or flight. And that fight or flight, or freeze, if you will, is the fighting reaction. If someone has that natural reaction, which has been conditioned into them over the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years or whatever, is if someone yells at you, if that person has that reaction, they're immediately going to start yelling back. If that person's angry at you, you're going to be angry right back. But then someone else might have a different reaction, which has been conditioned into them over the duration of their lives. So if someone yells at them, they get quiet. They become more reserved. But internally, they're brooding. They're upset. Or maybe they're anxious, or they're scared, or maybe they cry. So it doesn't matter what the reaction is that we have. It's that we must first understand that we have a natural reaction. And then once we can acknowledge the fact that we have that reaction, we can begin to disassociate ourselves from it and ask ourselves consciously, logically, rationally, how do I want to react? And if you look at all the greats in any of the religious texts, if you look at the greats in business or politics, it's insane things happen, and they have the ability to control the reaction to the thing. So when the masses, most people have these very strong emotional reactions, it's the leaders that have the ability to think to not have the same reaction as everyone else, and instead they choose the reaction that is going to best serve them in that moment. And so when we think about the distractions, whether it's physical distractions, notifications, email, social media, etc., or if it's an emotional distraction where something happens and immediately our emotions just take over. And then we can't think, we can't act, we can't do anything because our emotions are just so controlling. We need to be able to control both of those. And that takes a lot of self-discipline and a lot of self-control, and you're not going to build that in a day. And so what we need to do is we need to systematize. How am I going to be building this? And think of self-discipline or courage or any other, personal characteristic. It's the exact same way as a muscle. It's only by training that thing every single day or every other day. I don't think you should be lifting weights or anything every day. You tear yourself apart. Your body needs rest. But in terms of the self-discipline and self-control, we need to do things that will build that every day. So for example, waking up after the first alarm, that's not easy. Very few people do. I'd say probably fewer than 5 to 10% of people probably less than that, of people get up at the first alarm. And it's because they don't have the self-discipline to do it. Very few people work out in the morning. Why? Because they don't have the self-discipline to do it. It's hard. It's difficult. They don't feel like it. It doesn't matter whether we feel like doing something. If we've committed and we've told ourselves we're going to do it, by not doing it, we're only lying to ourselves. And when we lie to ourselves, we consistently break down our self-confidence, our self-discipline, all the things that build us up as humans and make us feel confident that if I say something, I'll do it. We need to be able to hold that true and stick to our word. And it's the easiest person, I know many people quote this, but it's the easiest person to lie to is ourselves. And if we consistently lie to ourselves every single day, we're going to feel out of control. And when we feel out of control, whether consciously or unconsciously, we allow any and all things to distract us. So as a simple example of some mind-boggling statistics is most people spend 4+ hours on their phone every day. Their screen time is over 4 hours every day. That is 4 hours of your life. That's 28 hours in a week. I can only imagine, I'm not going to do the math in my head right now, but draw that out over, 52 weeks, and you have an enormous amount of time doing this, scrolling. And is that going to get me a more fulfilling, a more happy, a more resourceful? Am I going to be able to add impact to the world if I'm spending, and imagine that over 20 years. How many months of your life have been wasted? And then also 3 to 4 hours is the average statistic for how much time people spend streaming movies and TV shows every day. Now, I have nothing against movies and TV shows. I love Pixar. I love all sorts of movies. And it's the whole thing is there's a difference between not having anything better to do and doing it because you said or decided that, I'm going to do something for enjoyment. There's a difference between just hanging out and doing something with purpose. And so what we need to do is realize, where's our energy going? What are we allowing to distract us? Whether it's on the phone with social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Snapchat, Pinterest, there are so many different things stealing our time, and we need to be able to cut those off or at least limit them significantly to the point where it's like, if we're going to be doing that, it's almost like I'm doing it for 30 minutes. I'm going to get all of it done. I'm going to focus, and then I'm getting back to my own life. And that's all social media is comparing your life to other people's lives all day, every day. That's a recipe for disaster. You're not going to be happy. You're not going to be fulfilled. And if anything, you're probably going to walk away feeling worse about yourself than you feel better about yourself. And so we need to limit how much time we're spending on those things. And another quick thought that I want to add about the news and the social media and the emails and all the updates that we're getting through all the different channels that we're absorbing information is constantly, I recommend and I work with people and I constantly say, you need to limit exposure to negative news. And, if you were to turn on NPR or read, any newspaper, there's going to be killings and murders and destruction and all these horrible, shocking, negative news. And a lot of people justify that by saying, well, Jamie, don't you want to be informed? And it's, yes, of course I want to be informed, but I don't need to be informed and put a tube into, my brain and absorb all this stuff every single day at all hours of the day, because it's going to leave me in a state of anxiety, being upset, nervousness, just unhappy. And most people spend most of their time just consuming all this negative news all day, 7 days a week, and then they wonder why they're not happy, or they wonder why they don't feel fulfilled, or why they don't have a positive mindset. And it's because you're just sitting there absorbing, whether through it's video or news or social media or through email. I mean, it hits us in every single angle, through radio, through podcasts. So what we need to do is we need to say, look, if I'm going to catch up on the world, if I'm going to catch up on news, if I'm going to catch up on all the crazy things that are happening, I'm going to allocate a finite period of time to do it. And it should be in the work week or during the weekend. It should be at some point in time where you're prepared to read all that negative stuff and it's not going to ruin your day, or it's not going to affect your work quality or what it is that you're trying to accomplish in that day. And I also wouldn't recommend it before you sleep, because then your mind is just going to be turning on that thing over and over and over again. So yes, we need to be informed, but we don't need to allocate so much time and energy and emotion to this thing. Instead, what we want to do is just compartmentalize that into a very specific time in the week when we're going to sit down, catch up on the world, catch up on all the negative craziness that's going on. But then the rest of the week, we're focusing on building our lives, our careers, making the people around us better, making ourselves, our loved ones, our friends, our family, etc., contributing to them, focusing on them. We'll catch up on the rest of the world later. All right, so now for the second part, and I know that first part was rather long, and probably this is going to be one of the longer videos I've created, but I'm so passionate about this subject of focus, both in the short term and the long term, because it is a superpower. It is one of the strongest and most important things that we can build into our lives, is having the ability to focus. If we can take that sun energy and create a beam so strong that we can do anything that we want in our lives, it is a superpower that probably less than 1% of the world has. So we need to build and develop it. So now the second part I want to focus on is short-term focus or micro focus versus macro focus, or a long-term or global perspective, if you will, for your own life and career. So the way that you can think about this is ground level versus 30,000 feet. So if you're focused on ground level, and we need both perspectives in our lives, in our careers, we need to be able to take a very detailed view, a very in the moment perspective, but then we also at the same time need to be able to zoom out and look at our surroundings. It's kind of like imagine yourself at the base of a mountain versus the top of the mountain. And we need to be able to consistently flip back and forth between both perspectives, because that is, in order to execute, we need to be able to understand the ground level, but in order to strategize, we need to have the mountain perspective, the macro perspective. So in the short term, in the micro focus, we need to be able to eliminate distraction. Now, another wild statistic is in order to get into deep work or flow state, whatever you want to call it, there's a million terms for it now. In order to just deeply focus on what you're doing and fully utilize your brain and be creative and engaged in what you're doing, it takes anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes without distractions to become fully absorbed in what you're doing. And you know when you're there, when you're not looking at the clock, you're not looking at how much time is spent. It's kind of like you zoom in, you're in it, and then you come out and you're like, whoa, it's been like 3 hours. It's been 2 hours. Very few people ever achieve that. And very few people have built that into their lives consistently day after day after day. And again, that is a superpower. And so the reason most people can't do that is for two factors. And I've already spoken briefly about them, but the first is self-control. But then the other thing is they're in an environment where they've allowed all the distractions to exist. So they have their phone sitting next to them on loud, and it both buzzes and makes noise. And they have all their notifications turned on. They have their screen flashing. Their email's up on one of their screens, and then they've got, social media up on a third screen. And then they're trying to do work on the last screen, but they've got everything, hitting them at every angle, and there's no wonder they can't get anything done. Because the moment they start to do something for 10 minutes, someone texts them, or they get an email, or a notification on one of their 500 apps on their phone. And you cannot get anything done with all those distractions. And so we need to eliminate them. So, and we'll talk about that in the third section, is how do you start to eliminate and optimize your environment so that you can focus for a long duration of time and get so much more done. Because of that 20 to 30 minute investment into getting into deep work, and most people don't hit that, because of that, if you were to think of a normal 8-hour workday, that means that most people in 8 hours are doubling the amount of work. So if you had the ability to focus, you could do in 4 hours what takes most people 8 hours. And that's 2 times the productivity. That's 2 times the outcome. That's 2 times the value. Imagine if you were to extrapolate that over 1 year or 2 years or 5 years or 20 years, you would literally double the progress and the progression of almost everyone around you. Again, it's a superpower. So now let's talk about the macro focus, the top of the mountain perspective, the 30,000 foot view. Now, this is, as I talked about earlier, it's the vision, the mission, and the commitments that you've set for your life and your career that you're committed to. And it is, you have this vision, and you may not know all of the individual finite details between now and where you want to be 10 years from now, or where you want to be 3 years from now. But what you should have details for is the 12-month commitments. Now, most people allow relatively good opportunities to deviate their path, to change their vision, to change their mission, to change their commitments. And so that high-level strategic perspective is knowing, where am I going, why is it important to me, and I'm committed to it. And I'm not going to allow anyone, anything to deviate my path or my belief of making that thing happen. And most importantly is most people allow failures or rejections or setbacks or bad outcomes or any of these negative things that will happen along the way. They allow those things to destroy their vision, their mission, and their commitments. And everything, all the 1,000+ hours of spent researching the most successful, the most happy, the most fulfilled. Like if you look at any of the people in the world that have had, ultimate successes, the law of the universe is risk versus reward. If you want to do extraordinary things with your life, if you want to do things that most people are not doing, there's going to be risk that most people don't face. And that risk is usually in the form of failure, rejection, self-doubt, and judgment from other people. And we need to be able to embrace the fact that if this is where I'm going to go, I know with certainty that these things are going to happen. And we need to get through it. We need to learn from it. And we need to understand that there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm going to go through the muck. You got to get through it. But once you're through it on the other side, not only do you become stronger, but your ability to stay focused, your commitment is amplified. Your focus becomes even tighter of a tractor beam in getting you to where you want to go, because you've already learned from all these other things and you tell yourself, look, if I can get through that, oh my God, I can get through anything. And so we need to have not only this defined, but we need to understand that there's going to be a lot of stuff that we don't enjoy on the journey, but that's part of the journey and we get better from it. And then that better outcome of us is going to get us that much more committed and that much more likely and probable that we're going to actually achieve the vision, mission, and the commitments that we've set for ourselves. So now to finish this video, the third area that I want to talk about is how can we begin to transform how we focus in our lives and our careers. And it relates to much of what we've already talked about, but the first thing is we need to start to build the self-discipline and the self-control, both in terms of our reaction to the stimulus that's happening around us, but then in terms of our emotional reaction to things and not allowing our emotions to completely dominate our thoughts, our minds. If something bad happens, we're not devastated for a month, for a year, we need to be able to control both the physical reaction, but also in terms of the emotional reaction for ourselves, especially in the short term when things are hot and happening in the moment. We need to be able to pull back, think about it, take a breath, and then decide, how do I want to react given the information I just received, whether it's what I wanted to hear or not what I wanted to hear. And then the other thing is we need to silence the distractions. So what I recommend for the phone, put your phone on silent or airplane mode and literally put it on the other side of your apartment, on the other side of your home. Put it where if someone just puts it on silent but it's still next to them, the urge, the simplicity to be able to just pick it up and check it will get you. That's going to get you. And so what you need to do is you need to eliminate the urge. It's not the act, it's the urge to do something. And so you want to put it on airplane mode or silent or something where you're not going to feel the buzz and you're also not going to hear the noise. And then put it outside of your reach where you would physically need to get up and go, a distance in order to get that thing, because if you're doing the work, the urge is it's not going to be nearly as strong. So begin to eliminate the distractions. If you're working, use one tab or maybe two tabs that are all work related. But if you have Facebook up and Instagram up and Pinterest up and all these other social medias up, it's going to get you. You will be tempted and you're going to check it. And so again, eliminate the urge. Don't do it. Don't have them up. Email. Check email maybe once every 2 hours, once every 3 hours. Now, if you're in a position where you can't do that, reduce the time interval. So, for example, I work with a lot of bankers or consultants and people in very high motion activities or positions. Well, check the email every 20 minutes. And so at least you're giving yourself 20-minute time slots where, most things can wait 15 to 20 minutes. You don't need to have that thing up every single moment of every single day, where the moment something happens, you're losing train of thought and immediately reacting to it. So begin to chop down the time intervals that you check these things so that you can have more deep work throughout the day. And that will, I promise you, will change your life and your career. So now the second main point in terms of how can we improve our focus in our lives, and this is more so on the macro level, but you need to set that value structure. You need to set the value structure of what is most important to me in my life. How can I make difficult decisions consistently and never have to regret a decision that I made because I knew that it aligned with my value structure? It is a filter through which you will be able to make decisions that most people can't. And you'll also be able to make them very quickly when most people can't make them at all. And that is this very, very powerful thing to have in your life and your career. And then in terms of setting the vision, the mission, and the commitments, again, most people don't know where they're going. And so they respond to everyone else around them. They respond to stimulus. They respond to available opportunities that compare to where they are today. And they just drift. And because of that, they never really end up anywhere. And they don't do what they want with their lives and their careers. They don't achieve their dreams. And it's because they didn't have the ability to say yes to what they wanted and no to everything else. And so now the third point is The third point, and this is a mental structure or a mental model that I had to learn over time, but when I did learn it, it immediately allowed me to categorize almost everything in my life in terms of what do I want to allocate time, energy, resources, and most importantly, emotion to. Because again, emotion, if we cannot control our emotions, we cannot control our lives. And also, if we're so wrapped up in our own emotions, we'll never be able to serve and focus on other people because we're so worried about ourselves. So not only is it great for your own life, but when you can control your emotions, you actually have the ability to help people, other people at a much deeper level. So what this mental model is there's three categories of things in your life, in our lives, in all of our lives. So there are things that we control, there are things that we influence, and then there are things that we have absolutely no control over and absolutely no influence over. It's totally based on circumstances and events completely outside of our lives, our control, our influence. We're just factors that are impacted by these things. So for example, the government. Well, we have one thing. We can vote. Now, maybe we can voice our opinions, and those are all things that we influence. But in terms of, do we directly control the government? Do we directly control taxes? Do we directly control the financial markets? Do we like all these things that everyone invests so much emotion and time and energy into these things, constantly worrying about projecting, oh my God, where are we going to be 3 years from now, 5 years? The world's falling apart. Well, these are things that we need to know, yes, and we need to understand them. But to focus on them every single day and allow our emotions to just explode and go in every different direction, it's not going to serve us. And it's not going to allow us to be the best that we can be. And it's not going to allow us to help in a way that we want to help because we're so emotionally strapped. So instead, what we want to do is focus on the first two categories. Most of our life, the vast majority of our life, should be focused on these two categories. And what I really like to say is 80% of your life, of your time, of your career, your emotions, your energy, like all that, 80% of it should be on things that you control. Things that you can physically input something and get an output. You cause and you get an effect. It's a lever. If you put the lever up, you're going to get an output. If you put it down, you're going to get another output. It's when we focus on what we can actually control, we can actually build. We can actually improve our lives and make a difference. And now the other 20% of our time should be focused on things that we influence. So that way, most of our time is focusing on, majority, 80% is on what we actually control, but then 20% is things that we can influence through shared opinion, through shared beliefs, through responding or through voicing our opinion about something. And so we need to live primarily out of these two buckets. And that third bucket of I have no control, I have no influence, and instead I'm just responding to everything. This should be extremely little. I mean, that should be a very, very small piece of your life. Now, and that's typically news and all the things that I talked about earlier. People just, it's a pipe into their head of just negative stuff. Yes, we need to stay informed. I completely agree and I totally understand that. But what we need to do is compartmentalize that into a very finite, small, focused period of time where we're going to catch up on the world, what's going on, how will that impact me? It's not, am I going to change this or not? This is going to impact me. This is how it will impact me. Got it, get it, good. Now I'm going to go back to my life and what I can actually focus on and control and influence. And I'm going to implement, what I learned in this other part and start adjusting for it. So these are the three main areas that I think that we can begin to allocate and control and focus on in order to improve our focus on both the micro level and the macro level. So first, again, is on the ground, reduce the limitations or the distractions and begin to focus on more deep work and structure the environment for that. Secondly, is you need to know the long-term vision, the mission, and the commitments that you've set for yourself and be able to say no and sacrifice everything that doesn't get you there or the vast majority of things that won't get you there. And then finally is you need to be able to prioritize how you're allocating your focus in terms of things you control and influence versus everything else that you really have no control over. So if you really like this video, what I encourage you to do, please press like and please subscribe. I'd love to be able to share more content with you. I know that today was a longer video, but this is something I think that is so important that it needs the time and the energy for it. And then also, if you're currently in a position where you're thinking about making a life and a career change, you're unsatisfied with your current career, how things are going, you're bored, you're not growing, you're unfulfilled, and you can't imagine staying somewhere for 6 more months, doing the same thing, going through the motions, I actually have a free case study. It's a video that breaks down my process. It's a simple 3-step process. It's worked for me. It's worked for over 100 different business professionals. If that's interesting to you, go on my website. It's complete for free. So thank you for your time. I look forward to talking next Monday, and have an awesome week.